Hi, this is Chapter 6, Lesson 3. We're currently looking at Playmaker, and this is about how to add a button into your UI that can control and manipulate your scene. Now, what we did in the last scene, or the last lesson, was a keyboard command. So just to recap, if I hit spacebar, you see it's turning it on and off by moving between the states on Playmaker FSM. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of my get key down, remove that by right-clicking on it. I can do remove action. I can also do it for light on. I can also do it by highlighting and hitting delete. I'm also going to turn off the bit that turns on and off the scenery because it's not necessary. I just did that as an example. So now we need a way of creating a button. How do you create buttons? Well, you have to go to your canvas. You could build a new canvas if you wanted to and start a new button, but you right-click, go to UI, and in here you've got loads of different user interface options. Buttons, toggles, sliders. So yeah, I'm not going to cover it today, but slider, you could add one of those and drag information out of it, as I was showing you in lesson 6.1, collecting data. You can collect data from the slider and use that to control the position of your scenery. We're just going to do a really simple button. So there's a button. Now it's added to this canvas that we created earlier, which is actually in the scene. So this isn't actually what we want. We want the canvas to be the UI around the outside of our scenes. It's beyond the 3D, it's in the 2D. So I'm actually going to start that again. I'm going to just turn this canvas off because we had that for a different reason entirely. That canvas is living within the 3D scene. We want a new canvas that's just living outside the scene. So I'm going to click, just as you saw, I did that just in the bottom of this root, somewhere empty, and create a button. It will create a new canvas for me. And you see this great big white blob that's appeared here. That is my user interface. If I double click on it, you see, and there's a button. And what's interesting is it's the other way round, but you can see in the game view there where it is, how it lives. And if you remember, we did buttons and UIs earlier in the series. First thing we've got to do is to choose where it's going to go and pivot it. So let's just move it into that top left-hand corner, where buttons always live, isn't it? And we're going to change the pivot to the top left. So now if I move this around, oh, that wasn't very nice. If I move this around, it will stay locked to that top left side. Okay, I'm just going to drag it in a little bit actually. Okay, I'm not going to pretty it up. There's options in here for changing how it looks. You can add images from sprites. Remember we did sprites earlier. You could put a sprite in there for logo or something, or your own custom button image. You go into Photoshop, start creating your own lovely backdrops with nice alpha fades on them. That can make the button look really, really tasteful and fit your UX design if you've got one. But we're not going to do any of that. So that's the button. Now what happens is that when you press a button, it has some commands in here. It says on click, what happens? What does it do, right? We click on the plus sign. Now we can, without needing Playmaker at all, tell it to turn on and off my lights. So I'm going to take a different light. I'm going to take this point light just to demonstrate. I click and drag it into this box, and I can say no function. I can change that to set active, okay? And it will turn it off when I hit the button. The problem with that is you then need to create another button that will turn it back on again. And you do that by creating another button that lives over the top of that one. And when you turn one off, you physically turn off this button in the canvas. So you turn that off and you replace it with the button that turns it back on again. And it's literally as ugly as that. I can't say it's simple, but I always imagine there was some sort of magic to buttons. It's not. It's literally they're over the top of each other and you turn one off and the next one goes on top of it. So we're not going to do that way. We're going to show you the more clever way of doing it with Playmaker. So we create an empty space like this, and we're going to click and drag our directional light that has the Playmaker symbol on it into that slot. So we've got our directional light applied. Now where it says no function, this will now have more options because it's got the Playmaker assigned to it. So we can see Playmaker. And what we can do is we're going to send an event. An event is a string of words. Now guess what those words are going to be? We've got events in here, okay? The events have names. So we want to copy this name, get spacebar, into that. And now what happens, when somebody clicks that button, it's going to send that name to this FSM and tell it to send it. So instead of having a button on your keyboard, it's going to be a button on the user interface. Now, we do need to sort this out a bit more neatly, right? So we're going to do button on and button off, it's going to be impossible to demonstrate this otherwise. So what you need to do is you need to change the text. So open this up, button, find the text, button on, I would normally teach you, if I was doing this more slowly, to really neaten up your buttons, get your naming conventions right, make sure it's all really clear what everything is. In fact, we'll have to do that because it's been impossible to find out what we're turning on and off. So I'm calling that button on, button off. And some eagle-eye people might have already spotted my mistake. I've mixed up my buttons on and off. You'll find out why in a minute. Not why, I didn't do it on purpose, but you'll notice my mistake in a second. So we've got button on, button off. And if we go to button on, when we click button on, we need to turn it off and reveal button off, okay? So we drag button on into here and we tell it with the game object, set active to off, but we turn button off. Oh, I need to create another one. We tell button off to turn on, and they're in the same place, so one replaces the other. I know it's horrible, right? And that sends get spacebar. We actually don't. This is where my mistake is. We're going to send get spacebar light off, because this is the on. This is button on. This is the one that's going to turn the light on. Okay, so we want light off. And it's going to send that command to send back. So I've got these other way around. And then for button off, we're going to do get spacebar, that's fine. And we just need to add 2 more of these, 1 for each of our buttons. Button on, button off. And hang on, which way around is it? So on this one, button on was off, button off was on. So this one, button on is on, and button off is off. I warn you, you can't do this while watching TV. You need to have your full attention on it because you do get all a bit mixed up. So now that's sending a command. So let's just recap what's happening. When I hit the button, button off, button on will be on first. So I need to have button off turned off, okay? That's off. So we're going to click on button on in the UI. It's going to send a command that, first of all, is going to turn off that button so you can't see it. It's going to turn on button off to replace it so you can then go back again. And meanwhile, it's going to send this command to the lights settings. When we've done that, it will go the other way around. It will turn on button off. So if you press button off instead, it will send a command to turn on button on. So we'll see the button on button and turn off the button off at the same time as sending a command get spacebar. Right, let's try that and see what happens. So I'm going to hit play. Now in theory my light should drop off because the FSM's told it to. Okay, so it's off. I have my button, and if I press it, oh, nothing happened. So that's sent a command. Now you saw it's swapping. Oh no, there we are. Button on, button off. So it's swapping the buttons. You can literally see them turning on and off here. So the buttons are physically turning on and off, and each time one of them is sending a command to that light. So they're both individually talking to this directional light. Okay, that's one. And let's talk to this one. Is also talking to the same directional light, Playmaker FSM. And then just by hitting this button, we're turning our lights on and off. And there you go. You've created yourself your own UI. Now the advantage of this is that you could build this into an iPad. Like, iPads don't have keyboards. Well, they do, but it's difficult to get Unity to load up a keyboard, or even the iPad's own inbuilt one. So UIs make a lot more sense for controls. So you can make that nice and neat. We can make it a bit smaller, make it a bit prettier. Won't let me do it now because we're running the engine, but you get the idea. So that's the end of looking at buttons, and then the next lesson we're going to have a quick look at how we can create a sequence of events. So it's a bit like animating something, but it's actually just a series of clever waits and commands. So we'll come to that in the next lesson, and that'll be the end of our Playmaker training. See you in the next lesson.